Yeah, so like the next one, Vincenzo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
And before we leave, we need to have a photo, you know. We are still using from the first one. So we want to everyone just start moving.
Okay. Right, guys, thanks for coming. So my session will be regarding the integration between Drupal and Astro. My name is Vincenzo Gambino. I'm a Drupal developer from London. I've been working with Drupal for maybe 14 years now. I've been a speaker at several Drupal camps and the co-author of a book regarding the Jamstack development. I work at Concentrix, which is a customer engagement business, and we're building a platform for employee ideation using Drupal, of course. During this session, I'm gonna explain the difference between progressive decoupled, fully decoupled, and headless. We're gonna dive into the JSON API, so we're gonna see how to do a request, get, post, patch, and delete. We're gonna see the basic of AstroJS, and then I'm gonna show you the demo that I built using the Umami demo. First of all, we have three different types of decoupled. The first one is progressive decoupled, is when we have another framework like React within the Drupal theme. So we have our theme, we embed the React into it, and we can get information from Drupal through JSON API or passing through blocks as variables. Another one is the decoupled, is when we have a Drupal application, then another application, in this case, will be Astro, and then Astro communicate with Drupal through JSON API or REST, for example. You can also have a React or a Next.js or any other framework that communicates with Drupal. Headless is when you have Drupal, the base, you make the content types, you make everything, and then you provide your content to the rest of the world. So the difference is that in this case, we are building the front end and the back end together. So you build the back end thinking about the front end, how it's going to look like, if you need any block, promote, and any other condition. While here, you're just building your application in Drupal, and then anyone can use it and then change the content as well as they want, and store it as they want. Drupal has two methods for communicating with the default method, communicating with the rest of the world, as we said. So we have REST and JSON API. REST is for non-entity data. So usually I use it for login, for user creation, and for custom REST API. While JSON API focuses on exposing Drupal's content, Drupal entities, and it's really powerful. Now we're going to see how that works. You communicate with JSON API through HTTP request, and you can have the GET request, the POST to create a new resource, the patch to update an existing resource, and delete to removing a resource. This is the URL structure. So you have the GET and POST, they are the same. So you have the JSON API prefix. This can be changed using an external module. Then you have the entity type ID, that can be a node or a block, and then the bundle ID, that means the entity ID. This is the UUID, sorry. Then you have also this is the example. So if you want to retrieve a list of articles, you have JSON API, then node, which is the entity type, and then the article, the bundle ID. And it will retrieve a list of articles. Instead, if you want to get a specific article, you can append the UUID of the article. So it will be JSON API, node article, and then the UUID of the node. While patch delete, they have the JSON API prefix, then the entity type ID, the bundle ID, and then the UUID of the content you want to patch or delete. When you do a get request, you get basic response, which is an object. You have the data array. So in the case of a listing of articles, you have an array, otherwise you have just the object. You have the type and the UUID in this case. Inside attribute, you can find the title, created, changed, and then any other things that's related to the node table, like the promote, status, version ID, revision. And then relationships will contain the fields that are related to other entities, like, for example, the author of an article, the tags, taxonomy, can be a paragraph, and anything else. Relationships, for example, for the user, looks like this. So we have the data again, we have the node articles. This is the same response as before. I'm just expanding the relationship object here. So we have the UID, which is the field of the node. Then we have data, and then we have the type and the UID. We don't get anything else, any other information about the user at this moment. And for the tags, it's the same. So we always have the attribute with title, promote, and everything else. And then the field tags, we find the type, and then the UID of the taxonomy. When you make a request, in the attribute, you get all the content, everything related to the node. You can limit that through doing using the field query string. So you do a get request, and you append the field, then you specify the entity type, and then the list of fields. For example, in this case, we are calling all the articles, but we want to see only the title and the created date. Or, for example, in this case, we want to create a specific article, and again, we want to see the title, the date has been created, and the body. And this will be the response. So we have, again, the attribute, the title, the created, and then the body. We don't get the relationship, we don't get any other field in this case. You can also filter it. So when you're getting a listing of article, you can filter by value. So you can, in this case, I'm filtering by title. So should be testing JSON API, and should also be status should be published. Or I can just specify the title, and again I can concatenate the fields. So I can get all the nodes, just the title, and then filtering by the title. This filter is basic, so it's just equal. So get the status is 1 and get the title that is this one. But of course, there are more filtering options. So we have the equal, the not equal, greater than and equal, start, in, and not in between. And we can use this again in the query parameters, doing the simple filtering. So we specify the filter key, then we add the filter name, the condition, and the path, which will be the field name. And then, again, with the filter name, the condition, in this case, is the operator, and we have the condition value. And this is an example with an array of values, for example. We want to get all the content from where the author is the admin and John. So we define the filter name, the path will be the UID name, so the author name. Then the condition will be in this case, and if we have an array, we can add it, adding arrays to the value, or if it's not an array, we can just have value equal admin. When we get lots of content, you can also sort it. So we add the sort to query string, and we define the field. So in this case, we are getting a collection and sorting by created timestamp. So we have the filter status, all the published node, and it will be sorted by created. By default, will be ascending. If we want to add, if we want to do the opposite descending, we can add the minus sign. So the short version is adding the minus sign in front of the field that we want to sort. Otherwise, we can specify again the path with the field name and then the direction. And again, the sort will be the sort name. We can paginate, so if we have a long list of content. So by default, JSON API provides only 50 content, but with pagination, you can have all of them. And you can add the limit, so how many you want per page. In this case, I'm adding the page limit into 10, so I will have 10 per pages, and the response will be like this. I'll have the data with all the articles that I requested, so 10 per pages, and then down I will find the links. In the links, I will have the previous, the self, which is the current page, the next would be the next page, and the previous will be the previous page. So depending on where I am, if there is the next page, it means that there is another page. If there is no next page, it means that it's the last page. Or if there is no previous, it means it's the first page of the content. Includes, this brings all the related entities into the payload, into the response. So when we see at the beginning, we just go to relationship. The relationship contains the type and the UID. If you add the include query string, you will get, again, the full entity of the related entity. So in this case, I call in the articles, I get just a title, and I want to include the user. and the response will be this. So I have again the data, the attributes with the title, and then under the include object, I will have all the objects that I've included. In this case, it's type of users, the ID, and then again, I will have the name. In this case, I will have the username, if it's blocked or not, and any other related field to the user. In this case, I'm calling the tags, so I'm calling I want to include the field tags, but in this case, I also want to see just one field of the tags. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to add the fields query parameters, I'm going to add the taxonomy terms tags as the entity ID, and then the field. So in this case, under data, I will always have the node related data, and under included, I will have the type, which is taxonomy terms tags, the ID, and then under attributes, I will have just name, nothing else related to the taxonomy term. To create a new resource, we need an external module. So we need the module JSON API extras. After enable it, we can go to the page, the configuration page, and you need to accept the create, read, update, and delete option. You can do the post request, and you can do only one at the time. So to create a new request, you send the payload, which is similar to the response that you receive. So you have the type, the attribute, and the body in this case. So we'll create an article with the title, my custom title, and then the body will be custom value, and the format will be in plain text. And if you want to add a relationship, so in data, you always have the node related data, and under relationship, you can add the field, in this case, the UID, and then the type, so it's user, and then the UID of the user. And to do that, you need to be, of course, a user that has permission. So in this case, use Carl. So the user will be API, so it's a user that I created with the username API and the password is API. I add the header, the post, so the link, and then the binary will have the JSON payload here. The response I will get 201. The same thing will happen for updating an existing resource. So in this case, I will do a patch request to the node article, and then I will specify the article UID, and I will say that the node type is article, the UID, and then the attribute that I'm going to change, and I'll get a 200 response once it's done. And for delete, again, I do a delete request to node article and then the article UID, and I will get a 204 response. There are other modules that extend the basic functionality of JSON API. For my demo, I just use the bare minimum, just the JSON API module that comes with Drupal core. I just add JSON API extra just to see a couple of endpoints. But we have sub requests. So as I said, when you want to do a post request, you can do one at a time. But with sub requests, you can send a payload to /sub requests, and you can add more requests. So for example, you want to create a content, but at the same time, you want to create a tag. So you do the first request when you do the tag, and then in the second request, you will reference the first request, and then the field that comes back that you need to add. Then simple load is an alternative to logging in. So usually I use the basic REST core from Drupal for logging in, or simple load. JSON API extra just give you extra functionality for JSON API. Menu items expose the menu items. The image styles expose the image style for files. Includes helps you with include files, just wrapping inside field name under relationship and not creating an external object, and views expose the views, and there are much more that I will show at the end. Now let's dive into Astro. So Astro is a web framework. It's based on React, and basically ships just HTML. It has no JavaScript at all, or at least it reduces the JavaScript load that it has on the server, and it makes it quite fast. So the features are, those are island, basically are classic components, and then is UI agnostic. That means that you write basic HTML and JavaScript, but you can add any other framework you want, also in the same component as well, not just one component per type. Then is server first, so the most expensive rendering is done on the server side, so it ships that's HTML, which brings us to the 0.js by default. then the most powerful things is that he used like the content, markdown content, and then it's customizable for the front end. It's Tailwind, MDX, and any other integration. This is the project structure. So we have the SRC folder where we have the components, the page and the style, the public where is the unprocessed assets, then we package JSON, the Astro config where we have the configuration from Astro, and then the classic TS config file. An Astro component basically is a component, as we know, as anyone had experience with React or Next.js or any other framework. And as I said, it does not include JavaScript by default. You can include it. We'll see how you're gonna done it. And it has for JavaScript by default, it has the front matter part on top of the file. So this is the component structure. So in our SRC folder, you have the component folder, and this is the hello component.astro, which is the default extension of Astro. So in our front matter, which is limited by 3 dashes, we can write any JavaScript we want here. All the JavaScript we want. On the build time, it will not be delivered to the client. We'll just use to build the page, the HTML of the page. So in this case, we'll have a component, the hello component, that will have a paragraph with hello and then the name. The name has been passed through a JavaScript variable here. So as the other framework, you can have props. So in this case, from some other component, we are calling this component and passing the props. So you can get the gradient and the name in this case from the global Astro props variable, and then you can render it in the page. And from the other component, you can simply include it in your front matter. So in the front matter, you have always the logic of the JS logic. You can add again a constant name wherever you want. And then here you have the h1, and then you can call the other component here, and you can pass the props. An island, as I said, is similar to a component. It does not ship, again, the JavaScript by default, but you can add JavaScript in the file itself. And you can tell the client when to load it through the client directive. So client load is when the client loads, it loads JavaScript by default from that component. Idle loads it when the load is finished. Client visible is the most important and the most useful in this case, is when the client makes the component visible. So if there is, for example, some JavaScript in the footer, so some component with JavaScript in the footer, if the user does not reach the footer, the JavaScript will never load in that case. And the same thing will be for component visible with the root margin. So when there is specified pixel, when the user reaches specified pixel in the viewport, then it will load the component. In this case is how we can add a JavaScript script that it actually renders on the client side. So again, we have the front matter, we can have our props, we can show the props, but we can also add the JavaScript by default here. We can add an alert, for example, we can add a click button, we can add whatever we want. Something that has to interact with the client. The same thing happens with the style. So you can add the style here. Now, all the components, they can go into pages. So the extension that support is Astro, MD, MDX, HTML, and also JS for endpoints. Similar to Next.js, if you add a file under the pages subdirectory, it automatically will become a routing. So, for example, if you add an about us page .astro under the pages, it will reachable under /about us. This is the routing structure. So you have the SRC folder, you have the page, and then you have the index, which will be the home page of your application. Then you have the about us, which is another page. Then you have the folder, for example, recipe, and index will be what is going to show under /recipes, and slug in this case is a dynamic route. That means that we don't know the name or the URL, of, for example, of this recipe, but it will be generated automatically by the system. And if we add 3 dots before the ID for the parameters for the for the URL, then you will get everything that will be there. So, for example, I'm using it for the taxonomy term, so I don't have any special template for taxonomy, so I just use that one. This is a page example. So under pages we have the index, and here I can add again under front matter I can add the page title, and then here I can show it inside the page. And I can have again about us, so I'm passing the page title again, and then again here. And as you see here in both pages, I've used HTML, head, body, and everything. So we can reduce this one by using layouts. So under the layouts folder, you can create, for example, the main layouts, where it gets a props like title, and you add the basic structure of the page. And under slots will go everything that will be included under the layouts. So in this case, we import a layout. So in our index, for example, so we pass the props Yami demo, and then we can pass then again the h1. It will be shown under the slots. We can also do data fetching. So inside of our front matter, we can fetch content from an external API. We get the response, we get the results, and then under random users, we pass it through to the content. This leads us to the dynamic route, as I said before. So when you add, for example, parameters under the brackets, this actually becomes the parameters. And this, similar to Next.js, can be used using getStaticPath. I don't know if you're familiar with Next.js, but in this case, if this function will generate all the pages based on the path that you passed. In this case, I'm passing the ID, and then it will generate all the pages with that ID. So, for example, here in our front matter, we have the getStaticPath function. Then we have the ID, Clifford, so will be reachable at Clifford, at Rover, at Spot, and then we get the ID of the params, and then we can show it in the page. If we go to a page that does not exist, it will return a 404 page. So in my example, I'm using the getStaticPath to generate all the pages of the recipes. So I get all the recipes from Drupal to the Umami demo. Then I return the params, which will be the aliases. So I will get just the last part of the aliases because I'm gonna use a different URL path. And then in the props, I'm gonna pass the recipe. So then in my content, I can show the recipe title, the description, passing through the props. While building my application, I used the JSON API params. So as we saw before, we were building our query string, basically writing the name of the fields and everything like this. So if you want, you can put it here and then pass also variables. But the package Drupal JSON API params helps you building a better URL in this way. So you create a new object, and then in the params in this case, I can add fields. So for example, here I specify the node article and then an array of fields that I want to pass. And then I can also, for example, add a filter. So the title, and then I can pass the title name. And this will basically generate what is basically in here, the same thing. And then you can, of course, call your endpoint adding the params here. This is useful when you build more complex requests. So in this case, I'm calling all the node articles. I'm getting these fields. I want to see the images of that are related to the article. Then I add the field image, and then also I want to see the URI of the image so I can show it. Then I can add a filter, and of course I can add as well a sort. I'm also using JSON-A, so this one helps formatting the JSON API response. It removes unnecessary nesting, and it does cool things with includes. So this is before JSON-A, so we're getting the data, all the information about the entity, then the attribute and the relationships, in this case the user, and also the include down here. So for example, if I want to get the username of the author, I need to go through all the includes, get the type, make sure that the ID is the same, and then in that case I can get the name of the user. But if we use JSON-A, it will return this. So you have all the attributes, the title, the UID, and under UID you have the name. And then of course you specify also the relationship name here, which just as a reference for this. Now, for the Yami demo, this is what I built. So it's the AstroJS Drupal Umami demo. So we have the home page with all the recipe. I have a list of articles. A list of recipe. And then I can go into each recipe and see all specification of the recipe here. I get the categories, and it shows the related recipe per category. Or I can go, for example, for tags, and it's here. So this lives under a repo. This is public, and I have the AstroJS and also have the Drupal application here. And here there is Astro. So under my SRC and pages, I have the index where I show the index of the page. So I have my components here for the homepage module, promoted recipe. Then under recipe, I have this. In Astro, when you use the page parameter as a name, it creates automatically the pagination so that we can be used then with Drupal. So in this case, I'm getting the recipe, and then I map it to the props, and then in here I build my listing page here with mapping. The same thing happened with the articles. Here I'm getting the articles, I'm building that map here. Then for the recipe itself, again, So if you see here, I'm using get static path. So inside here, I will get all the recipes, and then I will add it to my props here. And here is the recipe then. So again, we got the static path, the recipe, and then I map the URL of the recipe, and then I pass the props for recipe, and then again I pass recipes, because in this case I can get the related categories. So from the current recipe to the older recipes that are retrieved by the get static path. And here I got the HTML of the page. Here I got the components of the applications. So for example, I got the recipe card with the image component. And in here is where I do all the requests to Drupal. So here I got the function fetch URL, where I basically receive the URL and just does the fetch. And then I use JSON-A to deserialize the response, make it well formatted. Here is when I get the promoted articles from the node articles. Then here's getting the homepage from the block content. Here I get the recipe banner, promoted recipes, export recipes. Here you see all the add fields, include. And this application has, at the moment, no JavaScript at all. The next step for me is to create the contact form using React and using the Drupal, the JSON API web form module for Drupal that will open the endpoint for the web forms. All the information can be found here. Where is the live demo and how to contribute. And here all the resources that I talk about in this talk. This is the end.
I haven't used JavaScript. What's the advantage that what you've shown us gives us over what is already available within PHP.
Yeah, it removes all the JavaScript side from the. So what do you mean? You're talking about the JavaScript as a framework, or is a comparison between JavaScript and PHP?
Umami is available within Drupal, right?
Yes.
And then you show us Umami with your variation.
Yes.
What's the difference?
The difference is different framework, different UI that we use. In one case, we're using the Drupal default theme, and the other case, we're using another framework. It can be Next.js, or in this case, is Astro. The difference is depending on your team, what you want to build and what you want to try to achieve. In this case, what I want to try to achieve was just an integration between an external framework and Drupal using the default Drupal JSON API component, and show how you can use to build any other application. In this case, I used the Umami demo and Astro, but in the past I also used Next.js. I use Alexa as well to build something with this. So this is just an example. For performances, I'm not sure, because for static site, Drupal and Varnish works really, really well, really, really fast. Astro may be quite similar. Drupal and Varnish is faster than Next.js and React. I haven't tested with Astro, but Astro is quite fast as well.
So you're showing the concept of how Drupal can feed other systems.
Yes, exactly. As like API first, for example. You want to build something and then you want to share the content with other resource. Yeah, for example, for headless or decoupled or anything else.
I'm just looking at the file extensions you mentioned earlier in the talk, and I just noticed the few file extensions I'm used to.
Yep.
And as opposed to JavaScript, there'd be a pure Java extension for them and all that.
Yeah.
Does it mean that Astro does not have anything, or does not have anything to do with dynamic content related to Java?
No, you can use dynamic content. You can do this SSR version of it. So in my case, I put everything under the get static path, for example, and it pre-generate the pages. But if you do the same call, for example, in here, let me see. So in this case, I'm not pre-generating the page. I'm just doing on the fly. In this case, it's not static generated, because I'm fetching someone from outside and then returning it.
Does AstroJS support a way of having HTML as what you get back rather than using JSON API? So, but snippets, so not the whole page, but effectively what you're requesting, what you get back will be small chunks of HTML rather than JSON.
No, I think it's outside of the scope. I mean, what I have used at the moment Astro is with MD file. So I use the MD file and it gets basically almost HTML sometimes. No, it basically is a different type. I got the MD format, like the README file, for example.
Yeah.
And but I guess if you build something, you can get HTML, because basically when I get the content from Drupal, the body is basically HTML in that case. That I'm getting, not full HTML as we know, like with all the tags, divs, unless you have it in the body. But yes, you can, of course.
The reason I'm asking is I'm wondering just around, and I think this is just a general thing for decoupled, where you're getting something like JSON back, structured data rather than HTML. I'm just thinking about render caching, and presumably, and this is inherent, all of the render caching goes out the window because what we're giving back is JSON. And so I'm wondering, have you noticed that cause any, do you feel that there's any performance issues that come from that?
No, because you can separate the two caches. So one is from the PHP side with JSON API, and the other one is the build that you had done on the other framework. So for example, you use in this case Astro, and I store and I have it in Netlify. Netlify has its own cache, so it generates the page and cache it.
Oh,
right.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, and then I have the other page. Okay. So if you ship HTML directly, is already cached there, but it's not the purpose in that case of an external. Otherwise, it will be an iframe, like kind of iframe. Yeah. Any other question?
Do you need to run anything particular on the server?
NPM? No, nothing. You do like NPM run and then it starts. Yes. Actually, I need to add to the slide this. Yeah.
It looks very good. The
Thanks.
umami.
Yes, thanks. Right, and yeah.
So are all of these pages getting generated on fly, or some of them are static generated?
For the umami demo, I've done everything static.
Yeah. So
Yes.
like let's say in this one, so I want some of them to be in just like in Next.js have
Yeah.
this option
Yes.
for generating one section and keeping other ones dynamic. So did AstroJS also support that?
Pardon?
So does AstroJS also support that?
Yes,
Let's
SR.
say I want articles, all articles to be static, like page
Yes.
generated, and then recipe to be on fly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you can do it. So when you generate, for example, the articles listing page and the article pages, you put under static path. Otherwise, you do it in a different way. You don't put it under static path. Get static path. Okay.
So how long did it take you to build the umami?
2 weeks. On and off, not like 8 hours per day. So, yeah. Because basically it was, I saw what the Next.js umami demo did. So I just took not copied what they've done because it's different things, but the methodology. And that's why I knew JSON A package, which I didn't know. And I knew JSON API params, but not JSON A. And it was like really nice to see like a well-formatted response.
So without all the kind of technical exploration, just kind of, once you already know how to do it, how long do you think it would take?
You can, the basic of Astro is what I basically show in the slides. So yeah, I think in a week you can learn all the basics, and then once you start working on it, you will get more things to learn. Of course, different projects, different requirements.
What's the big difference between like this and Next.js then?
Because this one focus on Zero.js by default. Focus on not shipping JS to the front end, rather than having like a full React application as Next.js there. And then iterates JavaScript only when needed. So it's focused on iterating JavaScript when needed. If it doesn't need, then it doesn't load it.
That comes by default.
Yes. Right then. Thanks.
Okay, so let's take a picture.